James Hogarth's Evening Show
on BBC Radio Humberside.
The BBC across Lincolnshire and East Yorkshire. Carl Palmer with me on the programme tonight. So your CV reads Atomic Rooster, The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, and of course ELP as well. At some point you must have come to East Yorkshire or Lincolnshire and places like that.
Well, I'm sure we did do, you know. I mean, I can't remember. I started off actually my professional career here in London with Chris Farlow, the well-known soul singer, and I know Chris Farlow toured England extensively. I'm also in a band called Asia, as you well know, and Asia have done various tours. I don't know how close we've actually been to this area. I mean, I can't recall. I mean, as I say, 90 dates a year. It does get a bit foggy after the first 4,000, you know.
Let's talk about the crazy world of Arthur Brown. Who is the god of hellfire?
That's Arthur Brown. He was the god of hellfire and we were the crazy world, and that's how it happened.
Is it true that when he filmed the video, or when he was on Top of the Pops, that thing on his head was actually a vegetable colander?
I think the early fire helmet was based on something like that, but it did get a lot more sophisticated as time went by, and he did have one specially designed for him that would ignite from something in his pocket that he would, whatever it might have been in his pocket, but anyway, he could ignite it himself rather than putting his head behind the curtain and somebody standing there with a box of matches.
I have to say, having worked for the BBC for 13 odd years, I've seen health and safety and the checks and balances increase. You couldn't get away with doing that nowadays. Absolutely. You couldn't make this up. You just could not make this up. How did you end up in that group?
Well, basically, there was some sessions which needed to be done in London, and I was in Chris Farlow's Thunderbirds at the time, and I got called up by one of the managers of the Crazy World at the time, asked if I would go along and play. Anyway, I did, and then the next call that I got after that was, will you come to America and be in the band full-time? The album and single are #1. I said, well, I'll give it a go. So I asked Chris Farlow if I could leave, and would he have any problems with that? He said no. He said, you just had to find me a replacement drummer, which I did, and the replacement drummer was John Bonham, believe it or not. And I went to America, 18 years old, #1 single and album, and loving every minute of it.
It looks on the surface like one of the 60s quirkier groups. Was it as quirky as it appeared to the music behind?
I think it's a lot more serious than that. I think you're looking at the Crazy World of Arthur Brown being the very first theatrical rock group, way before David Bowie did his Ziggy Stardust and any of that stuff. Arthur Brown was really on the front page of all of this. So that's where it started. Unfortunately, it didn't carry on and reach even greater heights, unfortunately, but really he started that kind of rock opera, rock theatre. That was him. That was all Arthur Brown. The fire helmet was only part of it. If you actually saw the show, there were many other things which were involved in the show, but you'd had to have seen it.
What's it like being at #1? How does it make you feel?
Well, you know, I'm very fortunate, you know, because I've been in a band. I've been in ELP that's had a #1, Asia that's had a #1, and the Crazy World of Arthur Brown that's had a #1. And I left the Atomic Rooster just before they had their #1 tomorrow night. In actual fact, I recorded it and I had to re-record it. So I've been very, very lucky as a musician to be in many groups, 3 groups that have had #1s. So for me, it's great. It's great. I wish I'd written them all. I'd be a lot better off today.
You wouldn't be talking to the likes of me, would you?
Well, I still would, because I'd be doing this anyway. I trust you. Trust me on that.
Does it change your life?
Does it change your life? Well, it obviously makes people sit up and listen to you for the next 2 weeks, and it obviously gives you a certain amount of security, but, you know, you're only as good as your last hit, aren't you?
I want an inspirational piece of music from you, an inspirational artist. Anyone that stands out? Any stories?
Yes, I must tell you that the first time I ever saw a full-blown professional rock group on stage, I think I was about 14 at the time, and I was in a group in Birmingham where I'm from called the King Bees, and they said, why don't you come along and see this group? They're from London and they are just an unbelievable band. They break up their guitars and they smash their equipment and they just write the greatest lyrics, quintessentially English. Come along and check it out. Now, you must understand, I'd never seen a real rock group before because I'd only ever been in dance bands and little jazz groups and things. So the King Bees were my first rhythm and blues group, and now I was about to see my first real rock group live in concert, and I went to see The Who.